marcas também difíceis, com muito calor. Vimos ali uma circunstância, ali um local de divisão das partidas, dos dois lados da partida desta enorme avenida, onde os atletas podem deixar as suas roupas mais velhas. Aqui está a Guiadola, o vencedor do ano passado. Ele já correu em 2:3:47, é o seu recorde pessoal em 2017 nesta maratona de Berlim. Este é Eliud Kipchoge. Aí está o atleta que não precisa quase nenhuma introdução, toda a gente o conhece, campeão olímpico também e recordista mundial. E já venceu a maratona de Berlim em 3 competições. Tudo então à espera desse momento da partida. Aqui teremos então mais de 45.000 atletas em representação, originários aliás, de 157 países. Tudo à espera então desse momento da partida. Aí está a partida dada pela Presidenta Municipal de Berlim, e a primeira onda da partida dos corredores para esta maratona de Berlim já está em competição.
The Ministry of Health protocols, we respect all the protocols. We get...
Aqui também teremos e outros atletas de grande nível.
Also die deutsche Spitze ganz klar.
Esta é uma das maratonas em que a prova masculina e feminina tem uma partida semelhante ao mesmo tempo.
Ich fand es an manchen Stellen gerade wirklich richtig schmierig, auch den Asphalt. Ich bin mal gespannt, was auch da nachher vielleicht
certamente
einmal rund um den großen Stern, die Siegessäule.
Das ist der erste optische Fixpunkt für uns natürlich auch bei dieser Marathonübertragung, ganz klar. Die Top-Läuferinnen und Läufer huschen hier sehr, sehr schnell vorbei, aber klar, wenn man weiter hinten...
Here we go. Respect all the protocols. We get...
Oh, that's exactly right. Klaus Henning Schulke, the 56-year-old Berliner.
Bottle Klaus.
Never has so much fuss been made about a man giving a drink to another man.
Indeed.
But there it is, Bash gets it right. Celebration, punches the air on the bike, and on to the next marker.
He's so enthusiastic. He absolutely loves it. Oh, steady, steady as you go.
Oh dear, I love it, I love it. There's a part of the support act, Kipchoge, who I like to describe as being the point of a big, powerful, beautifully sharpened lance, and behind him the shaft of the lance, the spear, is a massive team of personnel. Massa, coach, physiologists, training partners, family of course. He has family, he goes back to weekends, spends the week at the Kaptagat training camp. It's almost like a 5 to 9 Monday to Friday job, except of course he does train at weekends as well.
Yeah, his wife and 3 children. Grace, his wife, not here in Berlin this weekend. They'll be watching on television. Eliud was very keen to stress the importance of the team. Patrick Sang has put this fabulous team together, as Tim was just mentioning, and they are all here. Now then, here we are. World record splits at the moment after 9 kilometres, 22 seconds inside. We should stress that these are based on average times, the average split per kilometre achieved in 2018. But that's the...
In those red short tights and the white vest, tucked in behind the stripe pacemakers, is feeling comfortable. But the two athletes with him are both in unknown territory. They must be wondering how long can they hang on to this, as we see that elite field get underway earlier on. That was obviously half an hour ago. They must be wondering, and Damlak Bellehu and Gia Adola, whether or not they should start looking at the smarter strategy and be easing back on the throttle, because they are moving at a tempo which is more or less on the nose of 2 hours, and that is way, way quicker than either of them have run.
Yeah, and I think we're just starting to see the first signs of Gia Adola not struggling with this pace, but maybe just easing off. This is into a territory that neither of these runners has had before. The focus and concentration of Kipchoge, absolute. Patrick Sang has done a brilliant job. They've got such a close working relationship together. That mantra of run, eat, sleep, and repeat, and repeat.
Let's go back to the women's race now. They are approaching 10K. That is Troner's 4-year-old course record here in Berlin.
1 or 2 sharp turns coming up. They've got a right turn onto Heinrich Herner Straße, and then they'll be going down to the most southwesterly point of the course. So Kipchoge on his way, inside world record, possibly even inside 2 hours at the moment. Still a long way to go. Bellehu in second place, and Adola just about hanging on to that leading group of 2, and everybody else, frankly, way, way behind. Kipkemboy doing a brilliant job. He's discarded the cap.
Well, the women's field to the right of picture, still a big bunch. Thankfully, not quite as tightly compacted as I was fearing. Asefa is in there as well.
Gruppe laufen. Und das sorgt für diese Unruhe. Und klar, ne? Also jemand, der als Mann 2:20 läuft, sollte wissen, wie er sich zu verhalten hat. Aber es klappt nicht immer, leider.
Und nochmal zur Einordnung, das hier geht auf ein Tempo von 2 Stunden 17. Das ist absurd schnell, genauso wie bei den Männern auch.
I'm not sure if he even knows that Bellehu is there. I haven't seen him look around yet. I don't think he does care, no, because he's got his pacemakers and he will be preparing himself, Eliud, as they are, what now, 2.5 kilometres or so from the halfway point. He'll be preparing himself for having to take on the role of leading this race, doing the work himself. At the moment he's tucked in there, and there's a slight physical benefit of being tucked in behind pacemakers like that, but it's more a psychological benefit that you get from just latching onto the coattails of somebody in front of you, being dragged along. And the burden is subtle of having to lead, but it's nonetheless accumulates. So Kipchoge looking very comfortable, and I have to say, to his credit, Bellehu looks comfortable as well, tucked in there behind the double Olympic champion, the world record holder, the greatest marathon runner in history. And in many respects, Chris, if you look at his overall CV, you can make a good case for Kipchoge being the greatest runner in history. He's a world champion at 5,000. He's run a 350 mile. He's one of the fastest 5,000 and 10,000 metre runners ever right here today. And when those circumstances prevail, when all the boxes, critical boxes are ticked, he doesn't fail. He's only had a couple of failures at the marathon, and that's probably failures with a small F. That's unfair. So he doesn't get it wrong. So he knows full well now, and the adrenaline will be building quietly in his system. Psychologically, the adrenaline will be in there as well, that things are rolling out just fine. If it was a bit too quick, I think he'd have a word with these pacemakers and say, lads, can we dial it back a bit? But I don't think he's doing that.
No, he hasn't. Haile Gebrselassie had a wonderful image for what you've just been talking about. It's like baking the perfect cake. You need all the right ingredients in the right quantities, in the right mix. And if you get them all right on the day, you will have the most tasty cake you could ever imagine. And is he on his way to baking the perfect cake? Will there be a cherry on top? I wonder, with the sub-2 hour showing. We are approaching the halfway point.
By the way, the women have gone through 17K in 55.07, and that is a projected finishing time of 2:16.47. Under 2:17. It'll be one of the quickest winning times in history if any of the women in that lead pack can maintain the tempo they're moving at. 3:10 their 16th kilometre, 3:14 their 17th kilometre.
Another 2:50 showing for Eliud Kipchoge. Halfway, remember.
By her husband. There it is, leading women at 20K, 64.43. World record 64.11. Forget the world record, I think. That doesn't matter. That's not a factor today. The course record and something perhaps below 2:18 is very much the goal.
So we could have stories in both the men's and the women's race today. Sadly, I suspect that if we've got a new world record in the men's race, even a sub-2, I'm afraid that will eclipse anything that these women do today. But it would be brilliant to get a new course record. That is Chirono back in 2018. That was quite a year, wasn't it? Could 2022 go down as the best of the lot? The 48th Berlin Marathon. We're back to full numbers post-COVID. Remember, it was a very different place here last year, and the year before was cancelled, of course, in 2020. Great to see back to full numbers and great crowds on the street. And these pacemakers working really well for the leading women. D'Amato, quite some way back, with a question mark over how she's feeling.
Another athlete in this pack we haven't mentioned is Gola. That's Cisse Meseret Gola. She's a 2:20 performer. She's one of that pack of 5 who have run under 2:21, but not inside 2:20. Well, I think we're going to see several new members to the sub-2:20 club here today if this race continues as well through the second half as it has through the first half. They haven't yet quite reached...
Possibly going inside 2 hours for the first time. And in that case, we are potentially into the last 50 minutes of this race. Approaching 25 kilometres. We're down in the most southern point of the course, down the Hauptstrasse. There'll be another sharp right turn, and eventually they will start wending their way and winding up for the last 10 kilometres or so back into town.
Well, the world record milestones, Eliud Kipchoge, that 2:01.39 in September 2018. That broke the world record of Dennis Kimetto by an astonishing 1 minute and 18 seconds. That's a world record of Kimetto also in Berlin. Gebre Selassie, 2:03.59, the first ever man under 2:04. Paul Tergat, the first man under 2:05 back in 2003. 2:04.55. And Derek Clayton, of course, well, long ago, he was the first man under 2 hours, 10 minutes, the Australian, 2:09.36.
Yes, 11 world records on this course, 8 in the men's, 3 in the women's race. It is the place to come for world records. Kiplimo, his work is done at 25K. He's done a fine job. The pacemakers are done. It's now Kipchoge and Belihu.
I don't want to sound like I'm being too worrying here, but the pace has dropped. The last 4 kilometres, 22K was at 2:52, 23K, listen, at 2:55. That's outside world record. That gap growing for the first time, Chris. That's about 6 or 7 meters.
I say relatively quiet passes of the course, but we've still got decent support out on the streets. This is a course, of course, that Eliud Kipchoge knows so well. Running here for the 5th time, looking to win for the 4th time and draw level with Heidi Gebre Selassie. This is a masterclass in concentration, in preparation, in fitness, and of course in natural ability.
Kipchoge, by the way, split at 25K, 1:11.07. That was 1 minute and 17 seconds quicker than during his run in Berlin 2018, when he set the world record. It is, by the way, 8 seconds outside his 25K split in Vienna. So that's beginning to look like a tough ask. That that time set in Vienna, 1:59.41. I hope we don't see sub 2 hours slipping away, but that would have been a massive bonus on today's race. The world record is still very much on. Kipchoge beginning to push on and push away from Adola, Chris.
From Bellehoop, yeah, won 16 out of his 18. 16 out of his 18 marathon races. Just to reiterate, that does include the two non-official races in Vienna and also in Monza. You remember that in 2017, the sub 2 it was called.
Well, Bellehoop may well be on here for something very special, because while he's letting Kipchoge, or he's having to let Kipchoge go, because he knows he's got, some 16 kilometers to go, he's still running strongly. It's not like he's folded. He hasn't thrown in the towel, so to speak. Aside from letting Kipchoge go, he's still moving well, is Bellehoop, up on his toes, bouncing along. That's not as much of a bounce as Eliud Kipchoge. And many people would look at Kipchoge's biomechanics and say he's bouncing around so much. The top of his head, look at the top of his head, the way it's bouncing around. Now, in the ideal world, and of course some bounce is unavoidable, in the ideal world there's very, very little vertical movement of your centre of gravity. You keep it nice and fluid, and far be it from me to criticise the biomechanics of Eliud Kipchoge and the perfection of his stride. But maybe it's the footwear, maybe it's the shoes. He's bouncing along like he's only just come out of the blocks.
He is. It looks effortless. We haven't seen him smile yet, which means he's probably not hurting just yet, but he will be hurting. Make no mistake. But this is what he's trained for. This is what he's prepared for over the years. A reminder, 37 years old. He's 38 in November. This is his 19th marathon, full marathon. Bellehoop on for a massive personal best. Guy Adola is a distant third at the moment, through 27 kilometers.
And the women have gone through 23k, as we see that swing right there for Kipchoge, and he's moving away with every stride now.
2:56 last kilometre, so further evidence that things are slowing down a little bit. 2:56.
Yeah, and that's the slowest of the race so far. 27k, 1:16.56.
Meanwhile, it's a perfect 7 for Marcel Hug in the men's wheelchair race. 6 times Berlin winner, and now a 7th for the silver bullet. He's come through, and he really has made this event his own. 1:24.56 the winning time today. Congratulations to Marcel Hug, the world record holder, winner here in Berlin for the 7th time.
The loneliness of the long-distance runner, Eliud Kipchoge, in complete isolation now. The gap behind him is growing, there's no doubt about that, and Damlat Bellehoop has been quite mighty, hanging on to the coattails of the Olympic champion, the world record holder, but he's had to let him go. Now there are about 15 kilometers to go. We shouldn't predict too much of what acts will unfold over this next 43, 44 minutes. And Damlat Bellehoop is not too much out of focus at the moment as we see that shot. But Kipchoge looks like he's heading for victory. He doesn't get it wrong, Chris, generally. Whether it's a track race, a cross-country race, don't forget back in early 2003, he won the World Junior Cross Country and then never really bothered with cross-country again. It's like he said to himself, well, I've ticked that box, I think I'll stick to the track. And he did many, many years of great track racing, many fast times, then moved on to the roads. So he has, in effect, become one of that select group of athletes who's a man for all surfaces.
Yes, and in the debate about who's the greatest of all time in terms of the marathon, there's no contest. It quite simply is Eliud Kipchoge. But when you widen it, Tim, to cross-country and track achievements, does Bekele shade it for you, or would you still put Kipchoge ahead?
No, I think you have to say Bekele shades it because of the umpteen world cross-country titles, Olympic titles at 5,000 and 10,000, world titles galore, the second fastest man in history at the marathon. He has, he won his debut in Paris, ran a very, very quick time a few years back, did Keniano Eliud Kipchoge. On balance, yes, you have to say that because he's spread his skills, his talent across all the surfaces and over so many years as well. His longevity quite remarkable too. Maybe Kipchoge has to doff his cap to Bekele.
Should just also reflect that here in 2019, when Bekele came within 2 seconds of the world record, there is Klaus. Fist pumping again, he's done a fine job as Bottle Klaus. So well done, more nutrition, more fluid taken on by Kipchoge. Yeah, Bekele went through the first half in 60:48 here in 2019. That was ridiculously fast, and it wasn't a surprise to see him suffer in the latter stages of the race. Kipchoge then, on the streets of Berlin, cutting loose and out on his own. Bellew in second place. There is Adola, now back in joint third place, and alongside him, Bethwell Yegon, who was the runner-up here last year. And Tim, if you look at the cadence, look at the speed these guys are running, and contrast that to the rate and the pace at which Eliud Kipchoge is running, it's like a different race.
Totally different race, totally different tempo, and yes, the wheels have come off there. I think we can relatively safely say for Adola. Eliud Kipchoge lapping up the praise. The sides of the crowds along much of the course grow through the morning and are quite immense. Fantastic running this from Ndamlak Bellew. This is perhaps the biggest shock of the day in many respects. A man who ran a personal best of 2:09 earlier on this year. Where did this come from, this performance from Bellew? Yes, he's got many kilometres to go yet, but he's holding together pretty well, Chris, whereas we've seen what the first half of the race, the tempo did to the defending champion Adola. It's destroyed him.
It has indeed, yeah. It's a sad sight to see for Guy Adola. But, just signs now that Bellew is also starting to struggle. The shoulders are slumped. No such problem there for Eliud Kipchoge. Approaching 29 kilometres, and after the 29-kilometre mark, they will turn right, and that will take them on the start of the long drag home. They'll have 12 kilometres to go when they hit 30. The strain, for me, Tim, just starting to appear on Bellew's face.
No, I think you're dead right, and that's forgivable. But that gap is growing slowly, isn't it? I mean, I said a few minutes ago it's growing with every stride from Kipchoge. Well, let's say every half stride, because Ndamlak Bellew is probably about 60 metres down. That foreshortening effect is deceptive, maybe less. Kipchoge, I think at the moment, is just consolidating, Chris. Checking his splits, he's gone through 28k with a 2:59, and that came after a 2:57. Now that's a little bit worrying, because that is a long way outside what was required. His 29th kilometre has just come up, it was a 2:53, so back on track.
Yeah, consolidating, or is he struggling? Doesn't look to be, and we know how strong he can be in the latter part of the race. And there's the smile, there's the trademark smile, which appears when he's starting to hurt. He's working so hard, really hard.
Well, his last 3 kilometres have been 2:57 through the 27th K, then a 2:59. That was a little bit worrying through 28k, and then 2:53 at 29k, exactly on schedule for his old world record. Now 30k is approaching, as you can see. It'll be in a couple of minutes' time. But 30k during his world record is 1:26.45. But he was flying through the second half. And in many respects, it looks like the unfolding of this race today is sort of an inverted version of what he ran in 2018. A very cautious first half and then a lightning quick second half. Today, his first half has been simply science fictional. 59.51 through halfway, and this is a considerably slower series of splits that are unfolding through this third quarter of the race.
So the leading men approaching 30 kilometres, and that is a psychologically important mark to reach in the race. Eliud Kipchoge out on his own. That 2:53 last kilometre significant, because there had been building evidence that maybe, just maybe, the first half of the race was catching up with him. The crowd's building all the time. And Eliud Kipchoge, impossible is nothing, it says on his bib. And who better to demonstrate that than this man, one Eliud Kipchoge.
So easy to be wise after the event, isn't it? But I was, well, I am so shocked at the extravagance of the first half. 59-51. Now, I can only think that he sat down with his coach and his so knowledgeable manager, Jos Hermans, and his other advisors, his coach, Patrick Sang, and worked out what was the optimal tempo, the optimal way of letting this marathon unfold. And he wanted to go through halfway in under 60 minutes. But many would say that was throwing caution a bit too far to the wind after last year's 61.06 first half. There he is, through 30K, 125.40.
Well, still very comfortably indeed inside world record pace. Over a minute inside world record pace. So just over 12 kilometres to go for Eliud Kipchoge.
2:51, that 30th kilometre, Chris, 125.40. When he went through 30K in 2018, it was 126.45, so he's got over a minute's cushion, as you say, but he did really blast through the next 10 kilometres 4 years ago. During his run in Vienna in 2019, he went through 30K in 125.11. He's 125.40 today, so he's almost 30 seconds outside that. So forget the figures from Vienna, I think, and increasingly I'm beginning to think we need to forget sub 2 hours.
I would agree exactly with that. I think that's gone, and I think he probably knows it. There we are. There's the pacing over the last few kilometres. 2:48. He's right back on it. And we know how strong he can be and is in the last stages of the race. He will smell the opportunity there. He can visualise going through the Brandenburg Gate with less than 400 metres to go. He's got a little way yet, but he knows these streets so well. He's raced here on so many occasions. He's won every time he's raced here, bar one on his debut. So as we suspected, this is all about Kipchoge and the clock. Our little feature at the top suggested exactly that. The race, in terms of his opponents, has gone. He's broken the resolve of everybody. And now it's just this man out on his own, pounding the streets, the tarmac of Berlin. So the wheelchair women. In the last few minutes, we have a surprise result. Manuela Schär was the red-hot favourite, of course. It was a Swiss victory, but it was Catherine de Brunner coming home. That is quite a win for the Swiss. 136.47 on her debut. So well done to Catherine de Brunner.
Well done to Eliud Kipchoge, too, for entertaining us in spectacular style. Kipchoge-esque style. Nobody else can do this. Nobody else has ever done this. He has never done this. He is in new territory. This is where he is now operating in the dark, so to speak. We've said that he learned so much back in 2018 and through that run in Vienna in 2019, but he's in new territory.
4 women still shoulder to shoulder.
And in a way, Chris, it's regrettable, isn't it, that Kipchoge is, and justifiably so, very much the main act today. But actually, what's happening in this women's race is the better race, so to speak. At the moment in the men's race, it's Kipchoge against the clock. In this women's race, we have a real battle here between great athletes. And these 4 locked together. Pacemakers, of course, helping them along at a nice, steady tempo. It's a more controllable way of being able to run your race. There's the course record through 27K, 128.51. As you can see there, 1 minute 40 inside that at 27K. Their time, 127.11. So they are surely... Somebody from this group will hang on, even if 2 or 3 of them have a bad time. Somebody in this group will hang on to smash the Berlin course record on the women's side and give it a long overdue improvement.
Yeah, this could be a fascinating finale for the women's race. Should mention also that Kira D'Amato's main aim of the day was to try and lower her own US and area record, not necessarily win the race. Of course, she wanted to win the race ideally, but I think her main motivation was to come here and try and just take some more time out of that American record that she took from Dina Castor earlier this year. Dina Castor, just to reiterate, is in the field. She is in the race here today, 49-year-old, competing here in Berlin for the first time, completing her bucket list of all 6 world marathon majors.
You're exactly right to point that out, Chris, because we've talked about D'Amato being the pre-race favourite, but I think there was almost like a dam due to burst with 5 athletes behind her in this women's lineup as they stood in the line an hour and a half ago, with so many athletes having run under 2:21, but not under 2:20. So there was huge hunger and desire amongst this group of Ethiopians and Kenyans, and it is unfolding to plan for them at the moment. There is the little figure of Gola, Cisse Meseret Gola. She's a 2:20.50 athlete, and she's on schedule to break her personal best by about 3 minutes here today. Now, that was interesting. I wonder if that was telling. Vivian Chepkirui there in blue, right of picture, who has looked like the dominant figure throughout the race so far. She's back now in 4th place, behind 3 women ahead of her, and she had a little glance over her shoulder. And that, to me, suggests she's a bit worried. She's focusing on who might be coming up behind her to catch her, rather than sticking with these 3 and catching them. Tigist Asefa is the athlete who looks most likely at the moment, and this would be a meteoric improvement. Her personal best is 2:34.01. She's operating at a tempo something like 15 minutes or more quicker than she's ever run before. I mean, it's mysterious, but it's also astonishing.
It is astonishing. There's something about the streets of Berlin that bring out the best. But of course, we should also mention, Tim, the obvious point that all these athletes will have been training at altitude until a few days ago, so they get maximum benefit from coming down to sea level. The additional red blood cells, of course, oxygen carrying, and the full effects of that being seen here in both the men's and the women's races today.
No doubt about it. Chepkirui, in only her 3rd marathon, is going to struggle to maintain her winning streak. She's won her 2 previous efforts, both in Vienna. Vienna in September last year, and then Vienna last April. Both of them victories. Her debut victory was a 2:24 performance, and then she improved to 2:20 by some 3.5 minutes in Vienna back in April. But if she gets under 2:20 today, I will be surprised, because at 28K, she's got some 14 kilometers to go, and she's beginning to struggle. She's having to let those athletes ahead of her go. And I'm not sure it's because of an acceleration, Chris, so much as she is struggling to follow that blue line down the middle of the road, the 3 blue lines, and keep with them.
Yes, and the pacemaker, as you can see, is just looking behind, showing a little bit of concern through his body language. Back to the women in just a moment, but how is Eliud Kipchoge getting on? Well, he's getting on swimmingly well, of course he is. And he is, well, inside half an hour of running left in this race. It's Kipchoge against the clock, as we suspected it would be. He's heading towards kilometre 33. He's up, approaching Oliver Platz, and then he'll turn right onto the famous Kurfürstendamm, Kudamm, and then on towards Tauentzienstraße, Potsdamer Platz, and then very familiar landmarks in the centre of Berlin. There is Bellehew, who's had a brilliant race today. He's definitely the second story of the men's race today. Keeping an eye on the latest split. He was in 250 odd territory, 256, 259, then he came back with a 253 and then a 248. Tim, this is going to be telling for the latest kilometre split at 33K.
Well, that's right. There's quite a bit of seesawing in Eliud's running at the moment. You know, he's been going down 250, 253, and then you get the anomaly of a slower one. That 33rd kilometre at 253. The previous one is a 252, so he's bang on his old world record schedule per kilometre. But his 31st kilometre was a 258. Before that, it was a 2:51. His 28th was a 29. It was a 2:59. So there's some real inconsistencies. Not quite the same rhythm and calmness about his running now as what we're being told by the splits.
Yeah, according to the splits that we've got, 45 seconds is his buffer. That's his insurance policy. All of that hard work in the first half of the race. It's getting that balance right, though, isn't it? It's all very well having credit in the bank, but if that credit comes back to bite you in the second part of the race, then it's credit that's not really valuable when you most need it, which is in the last few kilometres.
Well, he's got, what, 9 kilometres to go, almost exactly 9 kilometres to go. And, Chris, I sense that this next 12 to 15 minutes is absolutely critical. I think an athlete of Eliud Kipchoge's character, his psychological strength, once you're in the last 4 or 5K, he feels like he's in the finishing straight. He's a fabulous 5,000 metre run on the track from years gone by. He will feel like he's sort of on the final lap of a mile race. He can raise his game and give everything. But this next 5K, 4 or 5K, through to sort of 37, 38K, is critical. If he can hang together, keep those splits down there around 2:53, 2:54, and not much slower, then the world record, or the tempo he's on, will give him a big world record. I mean, unless he really folds, the world record is on. There's no doubt about that. It's a case of now whether he can hang together this next 10 or 12 minutes and break the world record by a solid margin.
Well, solid is the word, because he said, even if I break the world record by a single second, that is a massive improvement for me. It's a big achievement. But you get the sense that he came here to Berlin this weekend wanting to take a massive chunk out of that world record. I think we can safely say that the sub-2 hour possibility has gone. It was on for the first half of the race. That has gone. It's now a question by how much Eliud Kipchoge will break the world record. He could still blow up, but he very rarely does. We've never seen it in a race in all his marathons that he's done in his career so far. There's always time for it to happen for the first time, but knowing what we know about Kipchoge, it's unlikely.
Well, Chris, for those viewers who have joined us in the last few minutes, let me remind you that Eliud Kipchoge has gone through halfway today in 59:51 in the Berlin Marathon. That is 1 minute and 15 seconds quicker than 2018 when he broke the world record, his last appearance here in Berlin. And I think, having been overly cautious back in 2018, he may look back on today and go, with his team, we were a little bit under-cautious today. I'm trying to find the right word for it. Just a little bit too brave.
Gung-ho, yeah.
59:51 at halfway, and now things are beginning to slow. His second half is going to be considerably slower than his first. And like I said 10 minutes ago, there's an inverted version of 2018 unfolding today, and he hasn't got that balance quite right today. I think he'll want to come back and get that balance right, hit the nail on the head.
Absolutely. So many different ways to win a marathon and so many different ways to try and break the world record. It's the finishing time, of course, that matters most. Just to remind you, in 2018, his splits were 61:06 for the first half, and then 60:33 he came home in the second half. So a negative split. That is not going to happen today because, as Tim was explaining, of the aggressive nature of the first half, 59:51. It's going to be a slower second half. The question is, by how much? And by how much will he break the world record? Approaching 35 kilometres. That will give us yet more information. We've had that virtual world record line, which we've been able to bring you a couple of times from our helicopter. So thank you for that, for the extra dimension, just to feed into how this race is unfolding. He hasn't changed in demeanour at all. The shoulders still nice and high, still got those arms working. He is breaking out into an occasional smile, and once again, bang on cue, he does exactly that. It's when it's hurting. And this is almost masochistically, Tim, is when he loves, this is what he does. This is what he gets up at 5 o'clock in the morning for. Because it hurts. Of course it hurts. It's hard.
Well, there is Andamlak Bellehu. He having to survive these last few kilometres. Probably the best way of describing it. He's surviving it very well after the continual pummeling handed out to him over the first 30K. he has survived incredibly well since. He's not moving anywhere near 250 per kilometre tempo, but he's moving at a pace that will see him break his personal best by many, many minutes. Hard to believe that he only ran 2:09 earlier on this year as a personal best, because for, well, about an hour and a half here, going on an hour and a half, he was running at a tempo some 10 minutes quicker than that. I mean, that is just a ridiculous statistic. Kipchoge looking good.
He is looking very good. 1:41.12 was the split 4 years ago. He's over a minute inside his own world record pace at 35k. 7.2k to go. Eliud Kipchoge, the world record is still on.
World record is on there, and let me tell you that at 30k in the women's race, the time 1:36.40, that was a 3:05 split. They're on schedule for 2:15.57. Their time is getting quicker. It's coming down in the women's race. The projected winning time, there has been an acceleration. That's why Vivian Chepkirui was dropping back. There has been an acceleration in that women's race. 3:08 and 3:05, their last 2 kilometres.
There's an injection as well. I think there's an urgency now about Eliud Kipchoge. He can sense he's into the last 7 kilometres of this race. He's up on his toes. The cadence is good. The body language is excellent. He's just gone past the Memorial Church, the Kaiser Wilhelm Gedächtniskirche.
Do you know, Chris, if I didn't know it better, I'd say you speak reasonable German. That's fantastic pronunciation.
There it is, that iconic war-damaged church looming into view for Bellehew, who is having the day of his life. And he'll be able to say, I was there with Eliud Kipchoge at halfway at 59.51. That's something to tell the grandchildren, regardless of where he ends up finishing this race today.
Well, this astonishing performance from Kipchoge is pinging out around the planet. It'll be headlines tomorrow, and rightly so. People in Australia are watching. Many Kipchoge fans down in Australasia loving the way this race is unrolling, and loving this women's race and the way it's becoming a real race, as opposed to what is, quite frankly, a time trial in that men's contest. I say contest, the men's edition. It's Kipchoge against the clock. Here you can see the leading women are on 1:39.52 at 31k. The world record 1:39.29. They are not so far, because of the acceleration in the last 2 or 3 kilometres, outside breaking 2:15 and perhaps even world record schedule. The gap between them and the world record at 31k, remember, with 11k to go, a long way to go, 23 seconds. Couldn't be, could it? Couldn't be. 2 world records in 1 day?
Don't be greedy.
I know. All right, dial back.
Goodness me, this could be a day to remember in Berlin 2022. 32 kilometres for the women. Eliud Kipchoge well on his way to a world record, and that is some impressive injection of pace there from Asefa, leading that duo.
Well, Asefa is a surprise package here today. She looks so calm, so comfortable, and yet running at a tempo some 18 minutes or so quicker than she's ever run before. It is astonishing, with a capital A.
There is Nonnendorfplatz. The men making their way towards Potsdamer Straße. Another very significant landmark, Potsdamer Platz. And from there, it's just around 4 kilometres. The crowds, I can tell you, we are on the finish line here, just beyond the Brandenburg Gate, waiting for Eliud Kipchoge to arrive in the next, 15 or 16 minutes. And Eliud Kipchoge, no doubt about it, barring any major accident, is going to win this race, that's for sure. At the moment, he's going to do it in a new world record time.
Well, Chris, his time at 35k, just to go over that again. A few minutes ago, 1:40.07. During his world record in 2018, it was 1:41.12, so he's got a 65-second cushion at 35k, but he did fly through this next few kilometres 4 years ago. How will that virtual Eliud Kipchoge of 4 years ago, who is about 400 meters down the road behind this real Eliud Kipchoge to go today. How will he go over this next 15 minutes or so?
Yeah, good question. But he will have gone through this with a fine-tooth comb, won't he, with his numbers? They would have poured all over the splits from 4 years ago. They will know exactly what they were doing. We wonder whether they were a little bit too aggressive in the first half of the race, but he will be very aware of how aggressively he ran between 35 and 40 back in 2018. Just a little cough there, just blowing out a little bit, but so far so good. The WD-40 has been applied to all the joints. It's well oiled, and it's like a finely tuned engine, just purring along like a top-of-the-range Bentley.
Well, Chris, maybe a couple of flies getting in the carburettor or something, because that 36th kilometre was a 2:59. That is the equal slowest of the race so far. The last time he churned out a kilometre that slow was back at 28k, and he hasn't yet dipped below 3 minutes per kilometre. And it would be lovely to see him maintain that form right the way through to the end. At 36k, 6k to go. In fact, almost at 37k now, so about 5k to go. And that, I think, begins to get him over a sort of fulcrum of psychological, at 2:56 there for that 37th kilometre, a sort of psychological
momentos para estas grandes performances. O atleta keniano aqui conseguir manter viva essa presença na frente da corrida, com então essa confiança que o ritmo lhe vai dando na frente da corrida. Recorde do mundo que certamente durará durante décadas. Tal a vantagem que Kipchoge mostra em relação a todos os seus adversários. Será de facto um dos melhores, se não o melhor maratonista de sempre na história do atletismo. Entretanto, isto ainda são atletas que estão prontos para mais uma vaga de partida, e veja-se só essa grande diferença nessa participação dos atletas. E já agora refira-se a presença de um grande futebolista brasileiro, um dos nomes mais consagrados do futebol, bem conhecido também por ter competido em Itália e no Real Madrid. Kaká é um dos competidores desta maratona de Berlim. Foi ele também apresentado pela organização. Kaká, então, um dos 45.000 corredores esperados esta manhã em Berlim. Este é mais um ponto de música da maratona, então, aqui a celebrar provavelmente mais um recorde mundial obtido em Berlim, e já são muitos e significativos, já falámos neles no princípio desta transmissão. Muitos recordes aqui batidos, 11 recordes então registados, 2 femininos. Entretanto, Tigista Bayashu a ficar para trás, Tigista Sefa a seguir na frente da corrida. É ela quem vai então na liderança e vai com um ritmo bem mais forte neste momento. Chegamos a ter uma diferença de 30 segundos para o recorde mundial e neste momento já está a 18 segundos mais lento que o recorde mundial. Tigista Sefa, essa atleta que está aqui a competir, uma atleta de 28 anos de idade, nunca correu abaixo de 2 horas 30 e está aqui a fazer um registro abaixo, está aqui a prometer um registro abaixo das 2 horas e 20. É de facto uma excelente antecipação da atleta etíope, Tigist Sefa. Que foi quinta também na meia maratona de Valência em 2019. Uma atleta que tem vindo a subir na distância. Ela que ainda participou nos Jogos Olímpicos do Rio de Janeiro em 800 metros. Agora aqui então a surgir nestas provas de estrada. Aliás, a grande alteração
entire shopping centre. But Kipchoge here needs to dig deep as never before.
Under 10 minutes of running.
I was going to say 37 years old. I suppose his most astonishing quality, Chris, in many ways, and what has enabled this fabulous streak of marathon wins, is his ability to stay uninjured, just to keep accumulating fitness, to build and build and build year on year. And that is the key for the majority of elite athletes. Most careers end because of injury. They don't end because of age, they end because of injury. And if you can avoid those injuries, of course you can keep going through your 30s, your mid-30s, into the years approaching 40, which is what this man has done. It's what Keniano Eliud does. It's what Haile Gebrselassie has done.
How many more marathons, competitive marathons, do you think we'll see from this man?
I think it would be unfair to put a number on it because he prepares so well, so diligently. You know, this is his first marathon since early March. He gets it right again and again. And people used to say years ago that there's a finite number of marathons in the Olympics. That's just not true. He might have another 6 or 8 good marathons in him if he plays his cards right. I think a lot of people are saying he's got 3 or 4. Who knows? There it is, leading men, 151.42, 39k. The world record, 152.26. That cushion has come in under less than a minute for the first time.
Yes, it has. It's being chipped away at, but he should have enough. 1:55.32 at 40k. Will be comfortably inside that. But is that margin, is that cushion coming down? And if so, how quickly? Because that's what he's drawing on here. Another 100 or so meters to go to the next checkpoint. Crowds pretty good on both sides of the street, but when he turns the corner into the next couple of kilometers, the final couple of kilometers, we were out on the course yesterday, even for the inline skating. There's the left-hand turn at 40 kilometers. Now then, 3:11, the slowest of them all, 1:54.53 through 40 kilometers.
Wow, that is significant. There's no doubt about it. 40k during his world record in 2018. He went through 40k in 1:55.29. That cushion has just come down to 36 seconds. It's still big. He's got 2k to go, about a mile and a half to run. Kipchoge surely will be okay. And Chris, I think the adrenaline has to be building in his system. I'm sure it takes quite something to get adrenaline building significantly in the Kipchoge bloodstream. But surely, when you're a mile from home, he can pump a little bit harder with those arms, bounce a little bit higher with those feet, and cover the ground a little bit quicker.
Under 2 kilometers to go. There is Gendarmenmarkt with the Berlin Concert Hall. Series of dog legs of 90-degree turns, but he's done them before. He'll be clicking them off. There are about 3 or 4 of them, and when he turns left for the final time, there is the Berlin Concert Hall on the left. It is a beautiful part of Berlin, and you can see the crowds building all the time. Another left turn to come. What a sight that is. Berlin on a Sunday morning, witnessing something very special here. We've seen so many brilliant races over the years. This could be the best of all. For a while we thought we might see the first ever sub-2-hour marathon in an official competitive race. That will not happen, but we are on for a world record.
Fingers crossed, we're on for a world record. Very gradually, even though he still bounces well, he still has that beautifully symmetrical style. We know he is slowing pretty dramatically. 3:11, the 40th kilometer from Eliud Kipchoge. That is the slowest kilometer split of the race by a huge chunk. And he's through 40k now.
Well, the next K split will tell us for the last time where Eliud Kipchoge is. 3:02, 2 kilometers ago. 3:11 through to 40 kilometers. Will that be even slower going through 41 kilometers? He's got another 100 meters to go before we can give you that information.
On the women's race, by the way, they are still projected to finish in under 2:16. 3:14, that 36 kilometer for the women.
He's back on song. 2:53, an injection of pace. Goodness me, what a reaction that is. And that is the mark of a man who knows he's almost there. Another right turn into the final kilometer or so. He has almost exactly 1 kilometer to go in this race. Eliud Kipchoge smiling, of course he is. It's hurting, but he's on his way to an extraordinary performance here. This will be the best marathon we've ever seen in a competitive race, and the crowd's building all the time.
And there is the hint of a smile there, Chris. You'll never know if it's a half smile, half grimace from Kipchoge as he negotiates this left-hand turn. I sense there is a slight upping of his game. I think he is now prepared to red line it and push hard through this next couple of minutes.
Onto Unter den Linden, that most famous of roads. He'll have the Brandenburg Gate in his sights. The lime trees on Unter den Linden flanking either side, and there it is for the first time. There is the Brandenburg Gate. That's the target, and beyond there, it's less than 400 meters to go. What a moment this is for Eliud Kipchoge. Let's keep an eye on the clock. We will tick round to 2 hours exactly. There's a reminder of the world record as it stands. 2:01.39. It's not a question of whether Eliud Kipchoge will break the record, Tim. It's a question of by how much.
Well, when he broke the world record 4 years ago, Chris, it was the biggest marathon world record advance in over 50 years. You have to go back to Derek Clayton to find such a big improvement. 1 minute 18, he took off Kemeto's world record. He's going to take another big chunk of his own world record here today. It'll be 15 out of 17 victories for Kipchoge.
One more little dog leg to negotiate. The crowd's going crazy. There is the Brandenburg Gate, and the sunshine has come out in Berlin. We are witnessing something very special indeed here. He goes through the arches in just outside, it will be 2 hours. 2:01:39 is the target. He's going to smash the world record under the famous arches of the Brandenburg Gate, built in 1791. And from here, 352 meters to go, less than 60 seconds of running. It's less than a lap of the track. All those early starts, all those endurance runs, the tempo runs, the sacrifices that he's made have all come down to this. His wife and children are watching back home in Kenya. The crowds are going crazy. It's history unfolding here on the streets of Berlin in the sunshine. The double Olympic champion is the greatest marathon runner we have ever seen in the history of the event. He's going to get inside the world record. It won't be by a minute, but it will be an appreciable chunk. He has done it again. This is superhuman. This is road running from a different planet here in Berlin in 2022. Eliud Kipchoge smiles for the last time. Let's keep an eye on the clock just outside 2:01. Eliud Kipchoge is a history maker in Berlin. Yet again, he has done it. The world record is gone, and now he can celebrate. And that is simply stunning. A warm embrace from Patrick Sang, his long-term coach. And the greatest marathon runner the world has ever seen has produced the fastest marathon the world has ever seen.
This man leaves you scrambling for superlatives again and again. Why did we ever doubt him? There have even been whispering from 1 or 2 people who claim to have been in the know in the last few days that the world record would not go today. Well, more fool them, more fool us for giving any credibility to those opinions. Because Eliud Kipchoge knew. He knew all along, didn't he, Chris? He knew that he didn't get things exactly right 4 years ago. I don't think he's got it exactly right today. I mean, let's work out his second half. His first half, 59.51. His second half, something like 61.17 or thereabouts. It's an absolute flip, inverted version of his race from years ago. So again, he will look at this and will say it was a good race, it was a lovely race, but it wasn't a perfect race.
It's astonishing to think that we're still nitpicking here, and we don't need to be uncharitable, but there is still room for improvement, and that's what makes this so exciting. But let's just enjoy these pictures and enjoy Eliud Kipchoge's moment.
But Chris, as an athlete, it was half decent a few years back. I used to finish races on my knees. This man looks like he could go round another 5K. I mean, he's recovered so quickly. He is a phenomenon in the world of sport, which his uniqueness transcends the barriers between road running and other sports, other disciplines, other endurance disciplines. This is Kipchoge, who is, in many respects, on the wider scene of all sport, quite unique.
So Eliud Kipchoge is home in a new world record. This is Mark Correa. We haven't seen much of him today. Number 5. Well, the celebration continue for Eliud Kipchoge. 2:01:09. We can now confirm 2:01:09. He has knocked 30 seconds exactly off his previous world record.
So proud to lift those Kenyan colours aloft. How many hundreds and hundreds of times have we seen that for world records, for Olympic titles, for world titles. This man just adds to his story. Another chapter to the book, Chris.
Another chapter to the book, yeah. It's a long book, isn't it? Well, Mark Correa, and again, we're just assuming, I'm afraid, that this is Mark Correa coming through into second place. We haven't seen Mark Correa all race, the 37-year-old who won in Paris back in 2015. He also won in Frankfurt in 2016. But for huge chunks of the race, it was the Ethiopian, wasn't it, who was in second place, Eliud. But Mark Correa has rallied here and is going to be very close to his personal best, 2:05.49 before today. Well, this is quite a rally in the second half of the race for Mark Correa. This is his Berlin debut, this is his first ever World Marathon Major, and at 37 years old, this is turning out to beat him, something of a day for the 30-somethings. You're never too late.
Well, he's going to be very close to his personal best, as you said, Kiss. 2:05.49 from that win in Paris 7 years ago. Does he know it? I think he's just going to be just outside it, isn't he? About 70 metres to go.
He's hurting. Mark Correa coming second in Berlin in 2022. And maybe now he just realised that he's just outside his lifetime best. Second fastest time in his career, 2:05.50 something. Is our second male finisher home behind Eliud Kipchoge.
But we know he's been passing bodies again and again, Chris, as Mark Correa, because what on earth happened to Gia Adola? We've hardly seen Germa Gebreselassie the whole race, and Damlak Belihu, where's he gone?
And there is Abate as well. Chumba finishing strongly. So they're finishing pretty thick and fast, but the margin of victory by Eliud Kipchoge over 4 minutes, almost 5 minutes in fact. There is Belihu just finishing now. He really paid for that ridiculous pace in the first half of the race.
Well, Kipchoge from Korea, from Abate, the 1, 2, 3 in the men's race, but in the women's race, the story is about this young lady, and quite astonishing it is. Tigist Assefa, let me tell you that her track ability is pretty special too. She's run 54 for 400. She's a 1:59 800-meter runner. She has no best for 1,500, 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 on the track. So she appears to have gone from being a sub-2-minute 800-meter runner in 2014 to a 67-minute half-marathon runner this year. That is some leap. You could call it a leap of faith almost, because she's not bothered with the longer distances on the track. The 28-year-old as she is now, Tigist Assefa, she's gone straight to the half marathon and the marathon. She ran 2:34 in Riyadh back in March. 7th she was there in 2:34, and that run in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia put her in a solid national standard category, not really international standard, 2:34, but now she has broken into the very highest level of world class, and she's going to go a long way under 2:20 here today. It is an improvement, the likes of which I don't think I've ever seen. To go from being outside of world class, nowhere near world class, frankly, to one of the quickest 3 or 4 athletes in history will be unique.
It's extraordinary, isn't it? She was not being talked about as a potential winner today, Assefa, no doubt about it, but she's found something from somewhere. The training must have gone very well indeed. She's got that slightly unusual flick of the arm, the left arm that just goes out from the body outwards. 2:08.42 through 40 kilometres.
2:08.42 at 40k, and we'll just grab our pacing charts and tell you what that puts her on for the full distance. It'll bring her home in under 2:16. She's heading for a 2:15 performance. She will, I think, on the back of this, probably become the third fastest woman in history. The Berlin magic is worked yet again. Berlin perfect, the conditions today. Look how hard she's pumping with the arms too. There's a freedom, a lovely relaxed rolling of the shoulders and the arms there that makes you think she's a track runner. You can see why it works now, can't you? Slight forward lean and enjoying this. She's got the bit between her teeth. She's got about 6 minutes of running to come. Could she really break 2:16? Wouldn't that be something else?
Well, just to remind you, best times of all time, 2:14.04, current world record, Bridget Kosgei, Chicago 2019. Then you have to go back to Paula Radcliffe, those magical figures of 2:15.25, 2003 in London. And then after that, it's Kosgei again, 2:16.02. So those are the top 3 times of all time, 2:14.04, 2:15.25, 2:16.02.
2:20 used to be a special barrier, a very tough barrier. I can tell you that 49 women now have broken 2:20, and that is very soon going to hit the half century and more, because this young lady, Tigist Assefa, there is no doubt, is heading for a big time below 2:20. She's 28 years old, and to go from 2:34 down to 2:15 or 2:16. This is only her second ever marathon. It's like she's woken up a different person this morning. They must have been so excited, her coach and training support group, to have seen her training unfold in